Tonight, I'm going to tell you a story that not everyone has the courage to listen to until the end. If you are in a dark room, turn on some light, or maybe it is better to just leave it in the dark to fully appreciate what is about to happen. Because this story is not just about creepy sounds, not just about fleeting shadows in the night, but it also contains a secret that can haunt you for days to come. Are you sure you're ready? And subscribe to the channel, like and share, because you won't want to miss any of these thrilling moments. David slowly smiled, a twisted, inhuman smile. He looked up, looked straight at us, and blurted out, "Not my voice. You have entered here. Then, you belong here too." The church shook. The old candles on the altar suddenly lit up even though no one lit them. On the wall, strange characters appeared, red as blood, constantly changing shape. I realized this was the same ceremony that the priest had performed years ago, a ritual to sacrifice, and this time, Weiss the sacrifice. David collapsed, but instead of collapsing, his body was dragged across the floor, sliding towards the altar. Marcus lunged to hold him back, but an invisible force threw him away. I was desperate for a way out. But no matter which door you open, it only leads to the old room. There is no way out. There is only one choice. Either face it or be swallowed up. I screamed, trying to call Marcus's name, but my voice was lost in the void. Only a whisper echoed back. You. Marcus rose, a last light flashing in his eyes. He pulled my hand and ran straight towards the last wall. And the wall cracked. A glimmer of light came in from outside. We rushed out. It was just me and Marcus. David is gone. People asked us what we heard and what we saw, but all the stories became meaningless. Because how can one describe something? Silence is more terrifying than screaming. I don't know where David went. Maybe he forever belonged to the darkness in that church. But one thing, I am sure, since that night, silence never left me again. Even as I sit here telling you, I still hear a soft voice right next to my ear whispering my name. If you cringe when you hear this, let me know by leaving a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss the next horror stories. And remember, next time you enter a dark, quiet place, make sure that that silence was really normal silence. Episode 1. Abandoned Church. The story takes place at a abandoned church area, located deep in a forgotten village. They say that place was closed decades ago after a mysterious incident plunged the entire village into darkness. No one dared to mention that incident again. People in the area only whispered and quickly avoided it whenever they heard about the church. One windy night, 3 friends, Marcus, David, and I, decided to step inside. We just thought it was a game, a daring challenge. But the deeper we went, the more we felt something not okay. The walls were cold, dampness permeated the air, and a silence that was unnaturally heavy. Not the usual silence, but the kind of silence that was like, this place does not allow any sound to exist. David was the first to break the silence with a chuckle. He said we were just scaring ourselves, but just then, there was a noise. Not big, not clear. Just a footstep from the end of the dark hallway. We stood still. Marcus whispered, "You guys, did you hear that?" I wanted to reply, but my throat tightened. The footsteps continued, getting closer, beat by beat, until it stopped right behind us. We turned back immediately, but no one. From that moment on, the church became a living entity. Every wall, every window frame, seemed to be staring at us. Marcus pulled out his phone to light the way, but the screen showed only distorted streaks of light. The signal was gone completely. David then, his expression gradually changed. He kept saying that someone was whisper right in my ear, But we heard nothing, only David heard. And that whisper grew louder, clearer, until he collapsed, clutching his head, screaming like crazy. We tried to pull David away from there, but the front door was gone. The church locked us in. Marcus pounded on the wall, screaming, but the echo was eerie and creepy. It doesn't bounce back, but it's like it's being swallowed up in darkness, and then silence returned. Silence does not allow any sound to exist. I saw my lips moving, but couldn't hear them. Own voice again. David stood motionless, eyes white, body stiff, and behind him, one tall black shadow, slowly reaching out. We pulled David back, but the shadow remained there. Don't move. Not gone, just quietly. Stare into us. In that moment, I remembered what the villagers had whispered. That, many years ago, the whole village disappeared in one night. No one survived. Only the church remained, silent and closed. It is rumored that the priest of the church performed a forbidden ritual to call back a force from the dark, but that force never left. It remained, residing in silence. Marcus began to tremble. He said. David's whisper was now ringing in his ears. "They are calling my name," Marcus said, his voice breaking. I grabbed his hand, but as soon as I touched it, his skin was cold, as if no blood was circulating. Part 2. The Curse of the Priest. There are churches that have closed, and there are curses that have never closed. Do you believe that there are prayers that are not directed to God, but to something darker? Tonight, I will tell you. The Curse of the Priest, a story never recorded in any Bible. After what happened in that abandoned church, I thought everything was over. But then, an old letter delivered to my hand opened another door. The letter had no sender's name, just a single line of text. He never left. The curse is still there. I trembled, because right below there was a blood-red mark, the symbol of the old parish priest. That night I dreamed that I was back in the church. The rows of rotten wooden pews were still silent. But on the pulpit, the figure of the parish priest appeared, wearing a dark vestment. He didn't look at me, just mumbled a prayer. But that prayer was unlike any I'd ever heard. The sound was muffled, distorted, echoing in my head like groans. I tried to listen, and then shuddered to realize it was the voices calling my name, the names of everyone who ever entered that church, including my name. The next day I went to the old parish library, and there, in a musty book, I found the diary of the former church warden. The pages record details. The priest used to perform strange midnight masses, not to pray, but to bind the souls of those who come to confess. There is a passage written in shaky handwriting. I heard crying coming from the basement, but the priest said it was just souls being purified. Basement? I never heard of that church having a basement. I turned around. It was covered in dust, but right under the podium, there was indeed a wooden door. It took all my strength to pull it out. A cold, musty smell wafted up. A stone staircase led down, into a darkness that seemed to swallow me up. I turned on the flashlight and stepped down. The walls were covered with scrawled marks, symbols I had seen in letters. Half-burned candles littered the floor, and in the middle of that cellar was a wooden chair, bound with iron chains. But what I couldn't take my eyes off of was the black vestment hanging there. It still feels brand new, like it was just worn yesterday. When I touched the shirt, the atmosphere in the tunnel changed. The flashlight flashed and then went out. In the darkness, a voice rang out. The priest's voice. But it wasn't God's word. It was backwards words, twisted syllables, that made my head hurt. I held my head and collapsed. For a moment I saw silhouettes of people, chained to chairs, their mouths sewn shut, eyes wide open, begging in vain. Then, it all disappeared. There was only heavy silence, Silence. And the vestment was still on the chair, moving slightly, as if someone had just sat there. I left the church in a panic, but from that day on, every night I heard the whispering of prayers around me. I know. The priest never really left that place. He bound himself to the curse he created. And worse than that, I fear that by stepping into that basement, I have unwittingly become a part of that curse. Because every time I look in the mirror, I see behind me the shadow of a black robe swaying slightly. Part 3. Dark Rituals. Have you ever had the feeling that what you see, what you hear is not only meant for human eyes and ears? There are sounds, images, that only resonate in another layer of reality. I used to think it was just my imagination, but after the night I saw the priest standing in the abandoned church with his deep eyes as if being pulled into nothingness, I knew I had touched a place that humans should not touch. After I escaped that time, I vowed never to return to the church. But some curses don't just go away because you want them to. Every night, when I close my eyes, I see rows of candles burning red in the darkness, hear whispers in a language I don't understand, and the lingering smell of incense lingers in my bedroom. I began to tire. The dreams became ritualistic. I found myself standing in a circle drawn in charcoal, surrounded by kneeling figures. In front of me, a priest with a distorted face, his lips moving as he recited a distorted prayer. And even in the dream, I had a terrible sense. I was not just an observer. I was participating. The real shivers started when I woke up one morning, and on the wooden floor next to my bed I saw a circle of black ash, exactly like the circle in my dream. I tried to tell myself that maybe it was just dust, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Something had moved beyond the dream, and it was slowly seeping into my world. In the following days, I noticed that my hands often smelled of incense, even though I had not lit them. My fingers were sometimes stained with black charcoal, and worst of all, at night I began to mumble strange words in a strange language. My roommate, who was horrified, reported that he found me sitting upright in bed, eyes wide open, muttering while my hands drew squiggly lines in the air. He left. I was alone in the room. And from then on, things got worse. One night, when the howling wind outside was like the howling of an invisible choir, I suddenly realized that my door was unlocked, although I clearly remembered turning the key. The door slowly opened, and in the hallway a small candle flickered as if it had been lit by itself. I shivered as I stepped out, and the path before me seemed to stretch on forever. With each step, the wooden floor groaned as if it were groaning. At the end of the hallway, I saw a squatting figure. As I got closer, I realized it was myself. My face, my eyes, but distorted and dark, as if molded from black smoke. It looked at me, its lips curled into a smile, then it held out its hand, signaling me to return to the church.